everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the Tetracast. This is RPG Site's weekly podcast where we get the site staff together to talk about our favorite genre of video games. My name's Brian Vitale. Joining me, I have Josh Torres.
It was a great week until something very not great happened earlier today.
Does it involve Thanksgiving?
No, not directly.
Okay. We'll go into that potentially a little bit in just a moment. We have Adam Vitale.
How do we know this is actually really Josh?
We'll have to quiz him later. Stuff that only Josh would know. And then we have Chow Min Woo.
Hi.
And then James, I assume he's playing Ultimate Final Fantasy 14 raids. I'm not sure. He might jump on later. We'll see. But yeah, Josh, good morning to you.
Yep, my name is Josh. That's true. That's a fact.
I want you to
Josh
list.
too?
I
Please
want you to list all 100 Gundams in chronological order. That's the only way we can verify it's you.
Freedom Gundam and Destiny Gundam. Those are the only two. In
I
chronological
think that's
order.
Chose the clown, the clown duel.
All right. It seems legit. But yeah, glad you could join us for the podcast today.
Yeah, it's just basically just a TLDR. I almost got my account scammed on Discord. Like it was to the point that like I fell for a very two-man operation convincing scam. They actually got a hold of like my info, but I was able to retrieve my email and secure everything, secure that down again, and make sure nothing bad is happening. So, it was a big scare. I was able to get it retrieved fairly fast. There's just a limited access mode thing on my main account, so I just can't for like a day or two, which is okay. Just hopefully it doesn't happen again, and I'm not dumb enough to fall for it. For me, I'm just like I know what scams look like. My brain wasn't working. It was it's one of those things that like it makes you realize like if I can fall for it, anyone can fucking fall for it.
Yeah, and the approach always changes, so it's not like any two scam looks the same. Especially if it's a two-man operation. You're like, well, this looks different from any scam that I've been forewarned about, and nope. But yeah, glad you were able to at least cease the damage before it got worse. And glad that you're able to join us here, of course.
Like my Steam account got hacked once before, and I asked Steam support, and they said asking how my account got hacked, and they said they found a loophole somehow through emails and stuff. But I didn't even do it. I didn't click any links. I just found some kind of loophole and got my account somehow.
It almost got really bad to the point that it almost got like online banking info bad. So I was able to at least, if it got to that bad, it was I'd be really stupid. I already feel stupid, but at least I was able to reverse course before something really, really bad happened.
Mm-hmm. For this week's episode of the cast, we're recording this on the last day of November. I think I always forget which months have 30 and 31 days. Yeah, last day of November, of course, for us in the US. Sorry, Chow. We're just on the tail end of the Thanksgiving weekend. So me and my girlfriend cooked our first turkey and turned out pretty decent. So we did the brining method, followed by like the dry skin butter and sage and spices on top and under the skin stuff, and turned out pretty well. And we had friends over, so I don't know. I'm proud of us.
No one got sick. Everything was a success.
There might have been there might have been no one got sick, but there might have been just too much butter because there's butter on the turkey, butter on the gravy, butter in the stuffing. There was just like a lot of it was a lot of food and a lot of butter. So no one got sick, but we didn't feel the greatest after eating. But that's kind of our own personal choice because we didn't know when to stop. But anyway, it was good food.
Yeah, I recently got an air fryer. It was like borderline changed my life at this point. It's only been barely a week. I have been exploring the world of air frying a lot recently.
So looking at the news this week, obviously, since it is a holiday week, pretty much since Thursday in the U.S., not a lot of news out of the U.S. front for us to cover here. Not a lot of news otherwise to cover here. We have a few headlines that we'll make sure to just kind of tidy up now so we don't have to have them pile up for later. A lot of us are still kind of working through the deluge of games. I've been playing through Dragon Age Veilguard, which the more I play it, the more I like it. So I am interested in kind of returning to talking about Veilguard when I do finish. But right now, I don't want to give in-process thoughts before finishing. I know Adam's been playing a few games that he's eager to talk about potentially next week or the week after. So it'll be a little bit of a shorter Stranger podcast as we just kind of tie up some loose ends here. So to start out, I know that you have been playing. Okay, in our little outline here, Josh, you put secret death pact game, and I don't know what this is.
I know what this
Okay,
is.
so yeah. So several years ago, my friends and I established this thing called Death Packs. This was established when Anthem came out. And
Remember
this
Anthem?
thing, remember Anthem, and it was one of those things where me or several friends will attempt to really commit to cooperatively playing through maybe a game of questionable quality. Let's say like things on the docket here, like maybe Redfall, but it's like under a certain price. We'll do Redfall. I know several friends did Godfall, for example, not Babylon's Fall. Godfall. Remember Godfall? Stuff of that nature. Where like it's maybe like it's received a reputation that it's not the best, or something that's like you can play with others, and it might be interesting to co-op. So this week, Steam started their sale, their autumn sale. That they priced a new 2024 video game under $5 this week. A AAA video game, and you're like, holy shit, that sounds
I think
like
it's a top
steal.
20 seller still in North
Really?
America.
Oh wow,
I
damn,
think.
that's crazy. Yeah, under $5. What is a AAA video game? And it is called Suicide Squad: Kill the Justice League. I don't know why you're chuckling. So we're like, well, we talked up that we were gonna do this, and like we saw that like a few weeks ago or so, Epic Game Store had this for like $5 or so as well. But we're like, not Epic Game Store. It's on Steam, $5 or so.
But by the way, I just had to check. It's Suicide Squad is literally in the U.S. according to Circana the number 20 game in terms of sales. So I was still correct.
Sounds like a success.
Yeah, top 20.
So yeah, me and 3 other friends, we're like, all right, we're logging in. Here we go. Suicide Squad, download 90 gigs, have it store up 70 gigs. Let's see what this is all about.
Live up to the hype.
I played as Deadshot, and then all my other friends did other characters. We skipped every cutscene. We went up, and tried to get as much of the gameplay as we can. Within 3 hours, one of them played for like maybe half an hour to 45 minutes before refunding. The other two with me is kind of a funny story because one of them went AFK, so I progressed with another friend, and then we did a swap off where that friend went AFK, and I played with the other friend. And after that friend and I did like this poison ivy mission, it was like the first poison ivy mission to any curious listeners who played it. How far we got. After that poison ivy mission, he just told me, Kieran, and he's like, this is the most serious I've heard him like in a while. I'm like, oh, what's going on? What's up? He's like, I need to stop. I can't do this. I'm like, well, what's the problem, man? He's like, this shit is so bad. I'm like, yup, it sure is. And yeah, and then he uninstalled. I thought about uninstalling, and then I uninstalled like the day after. My other remaining friend, I think he pushed on further. I don't know how much more, and I don't know if he continued. But it basically the whole death pact thing between 4 friends fell apart within 3 hours. Of that
Yeah, that's
game.
just an hour past the refund mark, though.
I mean, yeah, I mean, yeah, I mean, one of my friends was lucky enough to just get the automatic refund because he didn't last 2 hours. The other one, I think, tried refunding it. I think they still honored it. Me, I'm just like, I'll keep it. It's okay. I'll keep it.
Just think of what those $4 could have been
I
spent
know.
on elsewhere.
I know.
5
It
grand
is.
with Battle Pass like I did.
It does a lot of it. It commits a lot of the usual sins that AAA game live services do, and like the most annoying parts of it, like skipping cutscenes is great. Glad that it's a feature, but it's like when a new tutorial pops up. Let's say of like, hey, you received this stuff. We're giving you the tutorial to like do this aerial traversal, and then there'll be like background dialogue. You have to wait for the background dialogue to like finish before you get the option to say, okay, got it on that tutorial, for example. And then just stuff like just the combat encounter design isn't really that interesting because a lot of the current ebb and flow. I don't know if this changes in endgame. It only we didn't get past the campaign, but like a lot of it was just very just clusters of enemies on buildings. You go up to them, you hit your melee button, they get launched up, and then you shoot them. In my case, since I was dead shot, his melee is still like pistols that like plops them up, and then so it kind of like is doing a lot of these aerial like acrobatic moves, but in place, so it looks very off. Um, and it's just not really that interesting. But the most awesome part is after you do like an open world mission, like sometimes during the campaign, it's mandatory to like kind of do like some of the more generic open world missions to get the next story marker to go to and progress. Um, After those missions, you get this whole mission results screen where it shows like the custom emote of like the most MVP of the squad, and that lasts about 10 seconds, maybe 10 to 15 seconds. Then you go to the next one. Everyone gets their like kind of like loot box, which is like a kind of like this pod that shows up and it'll light up green or yellow in that pod before it shows you the loot that you got. So you get the loot, and whether it's various rarities, it's common, rare, legendary, whatever, with your sort of typical color coding. And then you can compare it of like, hey, is it better or are the numbers bigger or not to my loot? Is it better? And then after you go through that, then you go to another tab on that mission results screen, and then it'll show your dude and like if they leveled up or how much XP they got. So like after like every one of those like mission results screen, it's like bare minimum like 25 to 30 seconds you're stuck there until you can actually start playing the video game again. And for you and your entire squad. So that's great.
It seems like individually they're not bad. Like if it was just one of those things, like sure, like but
Yeah.
just
But just
death by a thousand cuts, just like
pretty
this, then
much.
this,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, just like you just want to like get on with the game, and then once you get on with the game, it's like the gameplay isn't even that interesting either. And like everyone has like their unique traversal skills over this big open world, but the open world itself isn't really that interesting. And traversing through it, just everything just feels like a chore in that game. Pretty much, it commits a lot of the modern AAA live service game model type dealio. It's not a surprise that like we really didn't last that long because a lot of us are kind of fed up with that design, and once you've seen it, you're just like, okay. So,
I know I've said this before, but I still don't really understand just the broad overall like umbrella concept of a live service game featuring the Suicide Squad. Like,
yeah,
that feels like such a narrow like scope. Like, who is a huge enough fan of the Suicide Squad to say, "Yep, this is gonna
Yeah,
be
I'm
my
gonna make
game."
this my forever game.
Right.
Yeah.
Like, I think I know. Like, I think it probably should have been more in the vein of like the Guardians of the Galaxy game, where it's just a single player game that hopefully is good, but just a single player solo, no online services just game.
especially with the, especially
Or
with
even
the
multiplayer if it was more like
yeah.
Marvel Ultimate Alliance or something, just
Right.
not live
Hmm.
service, endless treadmill forever game.
It's just such a shame, because especially with the developer track record like Rocksteady, everything up until this point, were absolute phenomenal games. People love the Batman Arkham trilogy, the ones that they developed. Because I'm leaving that because Arkham Origins obviously was another studio. Um, but I mean, it's easy. It's very easy to tell why that game didn't resonate with people. Like even if you got your hands on it and played it at a discount, this is just not a fun experience. No
I'm
matter what
curious
price
what other
point it
games
is.
you have death pacted.
Anthem was the first one.
Oh, I guess
We got
you did say that. Yeah.
Godfall, and then a potential one is Redfall. There's some other ones that we did, but I don't remember off the top of my head. But definitely on the docket, we're thinking about Redfall. Might be a potential one if the price is right. If it was like under $5, we definitely do Redfall.
With the anime Warframe, would that be considered a death pack game for you, Josh?
What's Anime Warframe?
I think it's like
Do
or
it Night
something.
Abyss. No, we don't really do gacha games like mobile gacha games as death pacting. Because the well has been poisoned enough that enough people will not touch it, and that's fair. But if it's actually like, quote unquote real games, even though they're not like the greatest quality, I think that's fair game. Yeah, gotcha games like that, not so much. We'll see. We'll see what the next real Death Pact game is. That's what's not as a Death Pact is Path of Exile 2 early access coming out next, right? A
Yeah.
lot of us
Um,
are
when you were
hopping
talking
in.
about Death Pack games, it did remind me when like while other people were cooking food, like I had helped with the turkey, but they were finishing off some sides. We're like, what game do we have on the Nintendo Switch? Because that's what we had hooked up that we can just play while we're waiting. And we had this like old dusty copy of Zoids Wild Blast Unleashed, which I
Oh
guess is
shit.
based off the Netflix Zoid series.
Okay.
Yeah, me and the person that I was playing with, no, nothing. Like I remember Zoids from like the '90s. Don't remember anything about it other than go Liger or whatever. And and I don't know. I don't have anything meaningful to say about it, but it's just a one-on-one fighting game where you're riding you're playing as a person riding on top of a Zoid, and I'm like, I thought they rode inside the Zoid, but no, they're riding on top of them, like mounted, like on a saddle. And we were just having fun, just kind of taking the piss out of all the super over the top stereotype characters. Like there's this one guy that had like his hair up like Vegeta, tied in like a hairband above his head, and he was just like a giant edgelord. And so we did just talking about Death Pack games. We're like, yeah, let's
Yeah.
just play the Zoids game. That seems like a
Mhm.
good idea.
Yeah.
Look,
But yeah.
my brain has rotted. When I hear the word Death Pack, I think of the Blood Pack in Fire Emblem Radiant Dawn. It's like a really bad plot device. Just think of that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I forgot exactly how we came up with that terminology. So many years ago at this point. It's endured. Um,
But if you want to experience a mediocre to bad game, doing it in that format
Go for it.
rather than just like, "Oh, I'm going to take someone else's word on it and just never even look at it. Like, oh, at least you've gone hands on. You
yeah,
have firsthand
yeah,
experience.
yeah. For me, seeing is believing, or game playing is believing. I guess in this scenario. Yeah. I mean, I usually like to give things a shot more often than not, unless it's like something I'm really not into. Like if it's like a sports simulation, or
Mhm.
but it's whatever. It's $4 I'll live.
I did hear some people talking about how, again, not my area at all, so I cannot speak to this with any authority, but the EA college football game that returned this year supposedly is like, as far as I know, like received pretty well and like critically received, at least from people who like cover those sorts of games pretty well. And it's like not something that's in our purview at all, but it's like
Yeah.
a game that like is it on this list that Adam just gave us the
Yeah,
top
it's
20
literally the
games
top
sold this
selling
year?
game of the year.
Oh, it is. So like,
Wow.
and it's not going to really get any look in anywhere, but it's just like a game that has an audience that has done really well. And you might say like, well, all those games are the same. It's like, well, that audience is, to my understanding, like,
Well, the context here is that there hasn't been a college football game in a decade or almost a
right.
decade. So while like there are NFL games or NHL games or whatever every year, this one kind of felt like an event
An
in
event.
that space because
Yeah.
it's like, hey, you know, remember playing college football 10 years ago? Let's get the gang back together and play college football again.
2014 was too long ago. I don't remember anything from back
Right.
then.
So,
Yeah.
and yeah, I saw some chatter about like it should have been nominated for more things at the Game Awards and whatnot. It's just, not the type of game that usually gets spotlighted or whatnot. But yeah,
It's tough, yeah, just like anyone who's like, especially like in the game industry space, like, passionate enough to like follow them, like bless them, because like following like yearly sports games, it's always it can feel like just running the mill at times, kind of mundane
Mm.
almost. But it's important to call out the ones that like do shine, but it's hard to get attention to them because so many people like just kind of bundle them together and just like kind of dismiss it all together because like, it's not for them, and that's totally fine too. Like for me, like it's cool that EA Sports College Football 25 is awesome, but will I ever play it?
I've heard secondhand. Yeah.
Yeah. So I don't know. Yeah. So that was my little that track story. The only other game that I've been playing that we kind of randomly received, like we didn't ask for it, but I saw we got a key for this Beyblade game. I'm like, okay, well,
Oh, I
based on the
didn't. I
benefit
didn't know
video.
you had got that. I thought you just
Yeah,
played it.
no, it's definitely overpriced. I'm not spending $50 for a Beyblade game, but I'm
Oh
like,
yeah,
okay,
I saw
well,
this is from one of our favorite developers, just randomly.
yeah. No, this is our from our favorite developers, Furyu. Um, well, actually, like the publisher is Furyu. The developer is I don't know
Oh, I don't know. Yeah, Furyu does a lot of like uh,
I think
a
it's
lot of their
Groove
games are
Box.
like outsourced
Yeah,
to different studios. But yeah, I saw this and we got the email straight from Furyu. It's
yeah.
like, hey, check out our Beyblade game. And it was kind of like a shadow drop. Like, wait, there's a Beyblade game?
Yeah, there's a Beyblade game that released earlier this month on November 13th, apparently, from this developers Groove Box Japan and published by Furyu. And I'm like, who better to at least just stealthily try this out than me? I haven't really interacted with Beyblades forever, besides that show that everyone loves the opening of.
The one where
Um,
Moses opened the water with the
yeah,
Beyblade.
the part of the Red Seas with the Beyblade. Yes, that one. So there's Beyblade X X1 or Beyblade X1. I don't know. Um, there's a very. It's I guess it's a missed opportunity because when you think of like a game about Beyblades, like it should be awesome because it's like battling tops. For people who played Eiyuden Chronicle, it's the Beigoma, you know, mini game. Except it should be cool because when you think about Beyblades, especially here like in the Western Hemisphere or in the western part of the world, we think of like the that show, and part of that show is like summoning like mythical beast spirits from the Beyblades, and they all had like special abilities and stuff like that. And I'm like, that's still uh that's still how I see Beyblade, but I don't think it's been like this forever. And this game is basically a very super repetitive rock paper scissors simulator. The very the premise of the game is you're competing in this Beyblade tournament, and most of the game is stuck in this tower that's 100 floors big, and you're ascending that building, uh, through like basically doing well on each floor. So like you go out, you start at the lobby, and then after the beginning of the game, you go out to like the first floor, you beat up you win a Beyblade match, you get some like reputation to be able to ascend to the next floor, and then like you can start skipping floors by like completing more challenges that give you more reputation, that lets you skip floors to get to like harder but more rewarding Beyblade challengers. And then every like 10 or so floors is like a sort of like a boss of sorts, which is like a distinct like Beyblader that has like unique character design, um voiced, and has their style of Beyblading. So it's the the basics of the Beyblade mechanics in this game is you both launch your Beyblades into about you pick up to three, and then sometimes it's a 1-on-1 match, sometimes it's a 2-on-2, sometimes it's a 3-on-3, and then you basically need to fulfill a point threshold to win the match. So like depending on how you knock out the opposing Beyblade in a match, you'll be assigned points. So let's say it's a 3-on-3 match, so you need 5 points to win. And if I knock out a Beyblade a certain way, let's say like I run down their spin gauge and then hit them, and they get knocked out of the ring, that's 2 points. So you now have 2 out of the 5 to win it. If I um if I basically outlast them in an endurance, like so, like their spin gauge like runs out on its own, that means you get a survivor finish. So that means you get 1 point off of that. And like if you fucking beat the shit out of their Beyblade with like an extreme dash finish, you get like 3 points or whatever. But the basic mechanics of this is like you both launch your Beyblades, um, and throughout the match, as like you're spinning around each other in this circular arena, you have the option to like attack. So you consume something like your like almost stamina gauge to like launch your Beyblade to like a linear vector to attack them, and then colliding with that Beyblade will do a certain amount of damage to them. You can also counter, so any incoming Beyblade attack coming to you, you can actually have your Beyblade like sidestep and parry them. Which is, I don't know how that works. I don't know if physics work like that, but you can certainly like parry a Beyblade attack. in this game. And there's around the outer rim, there's like these accelerator pads, sort of like F-Zero pads. So where if a Beyblade interacts with that outer rim, those start traveling circular very fast, and then like launch off of it like in a powered up state, and like it'll do like super crit damage if it makes impact. And as as this is happening, there's all like the very very basics. You're filling up this X gauge, and X gauge is where most of the interactions happen. Where when the X gauge is filled, you're placed into this rock paper scissors simulator, where you have three options, but obviously you kind of have to work around like what are they going to choose, and you try to choose the option that you think they're going to. You choose the option that you think will beat their option. So basically, like rock paper scissors. And there'll be certain bonuses to each of like the three options that you have, but your basic strategy is always the same. Always try to like pick the one that'll beat their rock paper or scissors, pretty much. And depending on like the bonuses of that option, you might like recover some spin gauge. You might do like a really meaty, juicy attack. You might debuff them. You might buff your own blade temporarily. But you get into these RPS interactions very constantly, so it feels like the decider of matches in that game is less so about like the actual somewhat organic Beyblade flashing, and more so of like, are you better at rock paper scissors than the AI, pretty much. And there's really nothing that really shakes up the dynamic of the matches. Like after you like understand like the mechanics after like the first few tutorials, almost every Beyblade match is going to be the exact same. There's no really new mechanics they put into the fold to really shake it up. The only thing that like you might be interested in like interacting with is like the rock paper scissors nature of like of like how I guess real competitive Beyblade is, where there's like attack types that beat stamina types that beat defender types, and then defender types beat attack types. And I guess this is like reflective of like how actual competitive Beyblading is. For the few YouTube videos I sort of watch about competitive
He did his
Beyblading.
research.
I did, and I had learned about like how there's three parts to a Beyblade, where like there's like this kind of core, and then you have like the border, and then like the tip at the very end, and like what I don't know. It's all fucking crazy. So like there's like a part system in this game that you can buy from the shop, that you can find on the ground, that you can construct these different types of Beyblades with different parts, and then you can enhance them with points that you get, and and then it has that very 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 RPG light twist to it. But it's like but nothing really ever changes in terms of like the core gameplay. It's very once you've seen it, you've seen all of it. The only thing I will give this game though is I don't know when was the last game that a game when was the last time a game made me feel like this, but this game has some of like the wildest character designs I've seen in a game. Like even for like anime standards, like they get pretty out there. Where like the main AI person that's like I guess like your navigator throughout the tournament. Her name is Number One, and she looks like she has like very very spiked up like anime blue hair that almost looks like a Super Saiyan blue character, but then one of them is highlighted blonde, and then she looks like almost like a blue Raichu in person, I guess is the best way I can describe this. And I don't know how else to describe this character to convey it very fast. But it looks like a blue Raichu if it was like a person. And then there's like some others that have like crazy weird highlights. There's like this grandma older character that you run into that has like a mohawk that has like it's like a multicolored mohawk. It's like radical as fuck. It's like crazy what they're doing with some of the character designs in this game. So I don't know. It's one of those things where like I'm not really engaged with the gameplay. I don't really care about like much of the gameplay at all. I don't really care about the story or the characters, but I do want to see what other character designs it has in the game, because the more that you ascend, the more that you'll meet new characters, and you just never know what to expect with the character designs in this game. So it's like one of those weird dilemmas of like I don't really like this game at all, but I do want to see what other characters show up in this game just to see the designs of them. And I can't remember the last time that like I had that situation with the game, where like my main incentive to progress was to see more of the character designs that it has.
If Blue Raichu was a person and had achieved Super Saiyan Blue.
Yeah.
That is a way to describe someone.
um, yeah, and her name is number one, by the way. Like whenever the dialogue box pops up, that her name is number one. It's like, all right, her name is number one. Um, so yeah, I mean that was just kind of like I don't know if I'm gonna continue more with Beyblade X X1, but I'm just like I would not recommend it at the price point. It's a $50 price point. They have DLC that adds more parts to the game for like $4, and I guess they're gonna add more DLC over time. If you really want, I mean, if you're really dying for a Beyblade and really you just want to live like you just want the simulation of playing a Beyblade game, but it's not actually Beyblade, and it's more like a rock paper scissors simulator. Then okay, I can see maybe this game will fill your niche if you just really, really want an RPS simulator, but it's depicted with Beyblade. Then yes, I guess this is the game for you, mate. But outside of that, I can't really recommend.
Well, thank you for covering Beyblade and Suicide Squad for us, Josh.
Yeah.
And then before we get on to our small bits of news this week, Chow, this is a game that we had talked about a little bit earlier this year. It was an early access game called Aeruta, Aeruta. It's still in early access, but we had talked about it, how it only had like one of the implemented story chapters. It sounds like the early access release finally implemented at least a second chapter or a significant update to the story.
Yeah, they finally implemented the second chapter. But you know what? You haven't played a game for so long, and you come back, and it's been feature
Yep.
creeped to like oblivion, and you're like, "What the hell is happening anymore?" And then they added all these like new features, like and now you had like no tutorial about it. And now you don't know what the hell it means anymore. You ever experienced that?
I have oftentimes not even early access games, but just other games we're gonna be talking about, like Baldur's Gate 3. Yet when I played that in early access, like 3 years before it released, versus the retail release looking almost unrecognizable. And then that game, even since its release, has been updated so many times. But yes, I know exactly. And not only that, but for RPGs, just relearning the game, even if it hasn't changed significantly, sometimes is a challenge for me. But yeah.
But yeah, they basically added the second island, and the second island is quite interesting. But I like the first island more just because the music is better. But that's for me, you know, like the music kind of helps. But this game's been changed a lot. They even added like a relationship system as well. So now you like talk to like these characters, and you're like, oh, and you see like a little heart symbol. It's like every time you talk to them, they have like a different dialogue each day, and then it's like if it's a full heart, it's like you could do like some kind of event with them. I haven't reached the full heart, so I don't know. But it's like they add a lot of things, and I think one of the biggest thing is like the game's a little bit grindy, trying to get the right drops. So it's like the whole adjustment for like getting the right drops are a lot more easier in this version now. But the game is still more
Rem-
difficult though.
Remind me, is this a side scroller game? Just like tee up like what this game plays like.
It's like a roguelike action RPG in a way, right? It's like a side scroll RPG, right?
Okay.
And then it's like every time when you learn like a new bread recipe, you get skill points and you could use it to invest in like more abilities for the weapons you use. In the version I played, it's that you can't respec your character, right? Or at least respecing was like non-existent. Now it's like you could just instantly like respec your character. So I think that's a huge change, right? Because you should be locked out of like making like poor choices without knowing what it does, right? And yeah, that's like one of the big changes. Like you respect your characters, but like the relationship system is like the newest thing here now that I see. And they also introduced like a bunch of new NPCs that added like new features like shops for like equipping badges when you go on your hunt. Because usually in this game, it's that you basically get to carry whatever like bread that you made to the battlefield. So you only have like two healing items. If you don't have those, if you use up those two healing items and you just make it to the boss, you're kind of screwed, right? Um, what is it? They added this thing that let you like recharge energy, and you have like a little bonus before you go into like exploring islands, and that if you have enough energy, you can also use that to like revive your character if you lose in the boss fight. So lots of big changes, I would say. Like nothing too major. I do say the game is still like difficult if you play on a normal mode, I would say. it's like you're basically stuck doing like these bullet hell dodging pattern every time when you fight like these bosses. So it's like difficulty hasn't been toned down, even though like your character's been like highly upgraded from the base version, I would say. But yeah, that's kind of like my experience with it. I
I
do
mean,
recommend checking it out.
you do say minor changes, but they're kind of like fundamental changes. They might not overhaul like the game entirely, but the fact that you have this new like revival energy mechanic versus your two healing items just is like a fundamental change that affects balance. So I guess those are the sorts of things they want to try to suss out in early access, to
Yeah,
try to hit that good balance of difficulty.
they're still like opening the feedback because what they said like earlier, it's like was it? I think you could actually like try out like this patch like 3 weeks ago if you bought it on day one. I guess they didn't. I guess they didn't let like the people that beta test their game. They didn't buy day one. I think that's what they said in their update or something. But yeah, they're still open to feedback, so they're still making more adjustments. So I believe they're gonna end up with 5 islands for the final game. I think that's what they said, but I don't know. Uh, each island takes about 2 to 4 hours to fully explore. So I think it's a pretty decent chunk for this game. I think if that's what they aiming for with 5 islands, I would say.
Is this a debut project for the developer or no? Or do you
Um,
know?
I actually have no idea, but
Remind
yeah,
remind me how you originally heard of it.
it was like a part of like these like Steam Festa demos and stuff, and I was like,
Oh,
oh,
okay.
and
I think I told you about it. Yeah.
yeah, I just bought it. I'm like, hey, this game's pretty fun.
Yeah.
Like, I'll just stick with it, right? I mostly like it. It's very punishing for a game because like you basically have to go through like this entire roguelike to fight the boss, and you don't really know the pattern so well, and then you just die and do it all over again. And it's very punishing in that way, right?
Mhm.
I haven't tried it on like the casual mode. Like there is an easy mode. It says that you just take less damage or something, or you're immune to knockback or something. I don't know. It's just like I didn't try it. I don't know if it makes that game that much easier. So, but it's a challenging game, I would say. But
I mean, sometimes you do just have to kind of go sight unseen. It's just like, yeah, this game seems fun. It's got a demo. It's got pretty art. Sometimes, to some extent, you do have to judge it by its cover and be like, I let me just give it a try. And then I guess you enjoyed it enough that it's got its first update and you kind of went back to it. Are you planning to just kind of keep up as the updates roll in or set it down? Because for me, I would have the inclination to set it down and let it get to like 1.0. Like, yeah, I know I'm in, but let me just let them finish.
I think I would just like play it after each update. Of course, the
Okay.
thing that I kind of worry about is like every time you get like a major like feature update, it's like oh your game is kind of unrecognizable from the base version again, right? So it's just like yeah, I'll play it because it's like beating an island is just kind of like a short burst of like playtime, right? So I
Mhm.
feel like it's better than trying to like cramp out like 20 hours within the span of a week because consider how
No,
busy
yeah,
everyone is.
I can see that.
Apparently, more interesting, other interesting early access games that came out recently is like been this like game called Atlas ATLYSS, where people compared a lot to like Fantasy Star Online 2, and like a lot of people, even though it's still in early access, like even this early on, like a lot of people have been having like a blast with it because it very much resembles that Fantasy Star Online 2 ebb and flow progression and to it.
Also, it's a furry game.
Yeah, people who
Mhm.
like furries, and that's fine. Even people who aren't into furries
Oh, is that the
like
game
it.
Junior was playing?
Yeah, I actually saw this. It was like a low poly online RPG with like foxes. And I'm like, this sounds like a junior game. So I messaged him and then he started playing it. So yeah.
Yeah, but
You should have.
everyone who's like gave it like played it like has like really enjoyed it and recommended it. Like even at this point, like even though it just barely came out on the 22nd, it already has like almost 4,800 like Steam reviews and like ranking overwhelmingly positive. So,
Speaking of fairies, you know what's the most funniest thing? What
what's
was
up?
that game that happened last week where they started a Kickstarter? It had that like demo. It was like Yashahime, was it? Is that what it's called?
Oh, so we talked about that a little. It's the one that had like a release date, but also had a Kickstarter. Like, I forgot what it was called already. I
Yeah.
think you did the news story, Adam. Maybe Yaksha is Yaksha.
Oh yeah. Okay. Yasha.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Yasha. Have you checked the Kickstarter? It's so funny.
No,
Okay, so they
I
have
haven't.
like free physical packs, and the physical packs are like like the character with their mouse pad and all these other goodies, right?
Mhm.
and they're like limited print or something, like 20 of them or something. But the fairy one is like turns out to be the one that sold the most, like the tiger dude. He had
Hell
like
yeah.
100 sold, and it's like
Dang.
it just keeps sold out, and they had like keep adding more stock to that one.
That's funny.
And nobody's buying the one with the girls and stuff for some
That's
reason.
really funny. Damn. I
But yeah,
know. That's pretty powerful.
it's like okay, so yes, there is a fairy fan base.
I mean,
Is
look, if there's anything that we've learned over the years, it's like the people who are devoted to furries, they're very loyal and committed, and they're very usually rich, or basically have the money to at least throw, and they are willing to support it wholeheartedly. And you know what? I admire that loyalty.
dedication.
They are. I mean, I have a few friends who are furries, and they're totally cool.
Yeah, I do too.
Yeah, so they're great. I mean, and I wouldn't know about it unless they told me about it. I'm always thankful. It's like, oh, like I didn't know this is a thing because I don't really, dwell in those circles. But that's cool that like you're aware.
And I know that was kind of a random hodgepodge of games to talk about, but kind of as good of opportunity as any to touch on these games that are um, occupying some time as we get to the end of the year.
Not everything has to be AAA.
That's
Yeah,
right.
we went through that gamut, that marathon a month ago. Do you all remember November 14th was forever ago?
Yep, that's true.
So going into news, not a whole lot. No real big new features or articles up on the site. Of course, we do have the Dragon Quest review, the Mario Brothers ship review from early November still up there. The Avowed preview and the Josh Sawyer interview. Obviously, those are still up on the site. If you haven't read those yet, go ahead and give those a read. Speaking of Baldur's Gate 3, they've announced that Patch 8 is going to be coming next year. And I remember patch 7 was the one where there's like some scuttlebutt that was the last major patch that Larian was going to move on to their next thing. We kind of, I think, mused what they're working on next because it seems by all accounts that it's not Baldur's Gate, that's gone back to Hasbro, and who knows who's going to develop that next. This is where you put a long extended sigh. If you know, you know. But Baldur's Gate 3 is getting another major patch, and it seems like Larian is still not slowing down because this is introducing crossplay across all consoles, a detailed photo mode, which they did say earlier was one of their last things they wanted to get out, as well as 12 new subclasses. I believe it's like one per bard, or sorry, not per bard, one per class. And then, like, for instance, the Bard, College of Glamour, the Cleric, Death Domain. And I don't have enough like D&D knowledge to know, like, when I read what one of these classes are and a short little description of what they are, to really be excited or not. But I have been vicariously excited to see people who are in that space to say like, hell yeah, you can now play Drunken Master Monk or things like that.
I'm saying.
One of my favorite memes was like the I sleep for the arcane archer or whatever. Like, oh, apparently the arcane archer is a boring subclass. I have no idea. And that could have just been that one guy's opinion. But yeah, every single class in the game. I don't know if every single class, but most of the classes will have a new subclass archetype to pick from.
Yeah, I mean
Like I
that's
said,
once again like another incredible commitment to just supporting just an incredible game. I mean, it's just like icing at the top, but it really didn't need icing. But they continue
mhm.
to support the ever living shit out of it, and it's what can you really say at this point? Is it's like it's commendable, it's admirable, and it gives more reasons for people to either pick up the game and play it, or have people do their like third to eighth playthrough of the game.
Yep. And
It's
the
awesome.
some of the images they show for the photo mode are very silly about the
Yeah,
poses that you can pick on the characters and things like that. But yeah, that's another game like Chow said. Like I played it on launch. I didn't see the like the extended ending because I remember when it first released, some people said the ending was abrupt, and that was one of the first things they addressed. And all the stuff that they've added to some of the characters, they kind of gave additional scenes to. They changed, they tweaked some of the romances. So another game, I don't think it'd be unrecognizable, but even though the game has never had DLC, the fact that they've added so much content to it, like at some point, would like to replay it. But it is not a short game.
yeah, they announced the details, but then they said the stress testing this patch is planned for January 2025. So it's not out right now. It'll come out eventually. And,
Mhm.
they'll start rolling it out in stress test form just beginning of next year. We'll see how that goes, and that's just really really freaking cool. Good on them, and I imagine just I can't even imagine like just how crazy challenging it was to just get cross-playing working in this type of game, because they already had like issues like trying to get this to work on console, but now you're trying to do cross-play in between them, all of them plus PC and Mac and all that stuff. Just holy crap.
Here's a game that we haven't covered, at least on our site, since last year. I don't know if there's been coverage on like the developer's official page. What was previously known as Project Mugen has a new title called Ananta, 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 and it got a new trailer. And the new trailer. It's got a teaser for a new like blowout trailer that's going to premiere next week on December 4th.
Yeah, and it's also kind of a weird situation. Like you're right that we really didn't get any new correspondence on this game since like September 2023. I think is the last time. So it's been quite a while, and then working on the game. But they even like closed down like the old Project Mugen YouTube channel, and like just everything's like it's like under a new YouTube channel with Ananta, and then re-uploaded like the first PV developer message, and then this teaser. So I mean, it still looks really, really cool. That it's last time it was shown, it was announced for PlayStation 5, PC, and mobile. We'll see if anything is going to change up there, but it still looks really cool. I would still really like to try it. They describe it in their new rebranding, this new name as a rule breaking urban open world. It's
So I was getting this confused with our next game because it's also
Yeah.
an urban open world RPG.
Is it rule
Also not to be
breaking?
confused, not to be confused with Zenless Zone Zero, which I think they've also described as not urban open world, but urban fantasy, urban.
It's easy to
It's an
remember
urban,
this one. This is just call it was it Genshin GTA or something? I don't know.
Yeah, we've for a couple of these games. There's no news on Zenless Zone Zero. Of course, it's getting its standard 6-week update cadence. This was for Project Mugen, which became Ananta. I'm not sure which way it goes. Getting a trailer next week, and then the last one is Neverness to Everness, which is another urban open world RPG. It has a new like closed beta test in China going on. I think it's either at the moment or just closed up. And as part of that, a lot of new details have come out about updates to the game, new features, and what the studio is currently working on. I have not dug into these to know exactly what's new to the game compared to what had previously been announced. But it's basically playable in China under a closed beta test and is getting some details coming out of that, as reported by Gamatsu. I'm kind of reading through the release. I don't know if press release is the right term here, but just the details coming out of that beta test.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, yeah, both of these are like kind of promising in their own ways. I would definitely give both of these a shot. I'm not. I think they're both trying something really ambitious, especially on mobile. Like, we definitely had our fair share of like open world mobile games over the year, but like both of these are like they're both set like in like very big cities and seem to have like pretty dense populations in them. And I'm just like, how are you gonna open that up on a mobile phone and with it all not like exploding? I don't know. It's really cool to see what people's different approaches are on these. And I'm not gonna be saying they're gonna be like both like amazing, but I think the stuff that they're throwing out, I'm willing to pick up and see for myself if it's cool or not.
And it seems like, as far as I can tell, to put some differentiation between these, Neverness to Everness seems like it's putting a lot of focus actually like on driving.
Yeah.
So like I know using a term like Chinese GTA is a little, but it does seem to actually have that focus on having like a fleet of vehicles to customize and actually have like mechanics around that.
Yeah, it's like cars and also like real estate management in that one where
Oh,
you can
wow.
actually buy property, I think, in that game, which is I guess that's like the main thing. If there's like two key features that they're honing in on right now, it's like that plus obviously the big open world and the supernatural twist to it. So
we're Yakuza as well. We had to do the whole estate management.
I don't know. We'll see. That'd be that'd be fun. That'd be funny. But yeah, and they also seem to have like some sort of like gravity shifting in it from like the early gameplay that they showed off. But yeah, I think that's like if there's one thing that like they're doing that's like different from like Ananta, I guess it's that, and Ananta has that. I think people like know Ananta, previously Project Mugen, as like the open the world like Spider-Man swinging game, like the anime Spider-Man. But I don't know what else like people really latched onto with Project Mugen aside from the Spider-Man swinging from the like from one of the characters, because supposedly like different characters now given different ways of traversal. So one of them can do the Spider-Man swinging, and she also rides a motorbike, so you can do like a Spider-Man swing into like a motorbike, and then like that motorbike is also like part of her moveset as well. While they're like your standard other characters, well, one has one has like a gun, you can go to like third person mode with that character shooting the gun.
I'm
So I don't
watching an
know.
older trailer from
Yeah.
last year, and someone's got like a spiked baseball bat.
Yeah, that's like. So I don't know. It's tough, man.
Someone's got telekinesis powers.
Yeah.
Doesn't
I
one of
guess
the characters fight with yo-yos?
Yes. Yeah.
Mhm.
It reminds me of Urguys. Every time I think about like fighting with yo-yos, that's where Urguys is in my. It's like, oh yeah, fighting with yo-yos, it's Urguys.
I guess we'll have to update on our page. We still have Project Mugen to be announced 2023. Clearly that didn't happen.
Well, I think we're just
Yeah.
waiting for the blowout this week to.
Yeah, the
yeah,
trailer.
yeah. So we'll know in a week. Yeah, so no need to rush anything. A couple updates for some games, some smaller titles that released earlier this year. Cat Quest 3, which released in August, got a big content update. Let's see, it includes 5 new side quests, new explorable dungeons, 3 new boss fights, and new gear. So a pretty sizable update for that. No, I haven't played it yet. I've enjoyed the first 2, but I haven't gotten to Cat Quest 3 yet. But fun little casual co-op RPG. At least the first 2. And then Card-en-Ciel also has 4 new dungeons. Obviously, that just released last month in October. So version 1.1, and then they not only announced the new dungeons coming in 1.1, but they kind of detailed. This is from developer Inti Creates, the upcoming updates. In December, they're going to get alternate cards called parallel cards. They'll be used in a new challenge battle mode. January, more dungeons. February gets an endless dungeon mode, and then March they say details to be announced, but still updates coming. So Card-en-Ciel will get updates throughout the winter and spring. So well supported there. One sales update. Was this part of like a Q2, Q3 fiscal year report from CD Projekt Red? Of course, there was some news about the Witcher 4 project, Project Solaris, going into full development. No details out of that other than it's in full development. Cyberpunk 2077 has reached 30 million copies sold, and then the expansion to that, Phantom Liberty, had reached 8 million copies. The last thing that we reported was 25 million earlier this year in January. So obviously the Phantom Liberty release late last year seems like it sold really well and kind of supported the base game in addition to that.
Yeah. That's a pretty good number. I wonder what their initial sales goals were for this game, like before it came out, and then reality kind of set in and the launch date of this game.
Yeah.
But I wonder now over time, like, did it actually was it able to like live up to that initial expectation? I don't know what their
Yeah, it's one of
initial
those things where when you
projections
look
were.
at 30 million, you're like, well, clearly it must have. But then like Witcher 3 has sold like 50 million. Now you could
Yeah.
argue, well, a lot of that's just $5 Steam bundles, but still,
Mhm.
that only caveats so much. So is 30 million a success for Cyberpunk? Part of me is like, well, it has to be, but I don't know for sure. Um, I do still want to watch Edge Runners because
Mhm.
as part of this, they've announced that they're partnering with Netflix for another anime. I don't know if Trigger is going to be on it again or not. And Edge Runners, it seems like people who haven't even played the game really enjoyed that. Like I've in my friend circle, some people who have really enjoyed that. And
To be clear, they say it's another animation project with Netflix. May not be anime. Who knows? It might be an Aardman
that's
stop
true.
motion.
Hell yeah.
I'd be
CD
here for
project.
that.
That'd be sick.
But I know Adam, you were saying that you actually just kind of really appreciated how they delivered their fiscal update because a lot of people just have slides on a PDF or whatever.
More and more companies are doing this, and what CD Projekt will literally do is they have one of their officers just kind of go to YouTube and like it's not a very long video. It's I don't know 5 minutes, and basically say like, hey, here's our updates. Here's the things that we talked about. Here's the sales numbers, and we're doing a thing with Netflix, and our team is working on Polaris, and here's our revenue, and here's our our profits and sales, and have a good day, everyone. like that sort of thing. Like very
It's
digestible.
just very transparent. Yeah. Rather than Square Enix being like, "Oh, we're going to release the English update 4 months late without any fanfare. Please don't look at it." That sort of thing.
Please don't look at it.
Yeah.
Not inspiring a lot of confidence, is it?
I mean, they still have their numerous projects going. Like the Witcher 1 remake is still ongoing. I don't know if that was Polaris or Polaris was the new Witcher project.
Polaris is Witcher 4.
Yeah. So,
There's a Witcher 1 remake, there's a Witcher spin-off, a Cyberpunk follow-up, and then a new thing entirely. I forget what that is. Project had something?
yeah. And then they still have they're actually gonna also add like Lucy from Edge Runners into like Guilty Gear Strive eventually too. Part of their new season pass. It's kind of an interesting collab as well there, and see how Lucy will translate into that game's mechanics. It'll be interesting.
We'll go through a couple dated updates here to close out the podcast. Voin, this is the first-person fantasy melee game RPG that Josh covered. I believe it was a Steam summer demo.
Yeah, the Steam demo, very very cool. I don't know if I don't know if I'll jump into early access immediately because there's so many other things I want to get to, but this was really one of the really cool ones that I really liked the demo.
Yeah, so it's entering early access on December 10th. On December 11th, we talked about this last week. Shiren the Wanderer, the mystery dungeon of Serpent Coil Island, released on Switch in February. We learned last week that it was coming to Steam. Turns out the Steam date is pretty soon. It'll be releasing on December 11th.
Yeah, base game will be $40.
Mm-hmm.
Not a bad price.
And the DLC will be available the same day, and it doesn't look like it has a price yet. I'm like scrolling through. If you buy the bundle, you save some 15%, but I don't know what that will total out to be, but we'll see. Just a DLC. Oh, sorry, I almost skipped this one. Octopath Traveler: Champions of the Continent. This is not the normal update for a Square Enix published mobile game. They're not shutting down Champions of the Continent, but they're transferring service of the game from Square Enix to NetEase starting in January 16th, 2025. At least for outside of Japan, I should clarify that. Josh, I don't know if there's any like precedents for this, or any like if you have any insight like what this would like actually mean. Because I don't know if I've read a headline like this before.
There's definitely been stuff like this. Like I believe there's the old Danmachi mobile game was initially headed under Crunchyroll when it released in English, and then eventually was given back to like I think the original developers due to some management kerfuffle. I don't know exactly the exact details, but there's definitely been instances in this space where a company will switch operations from one to the next. Even like Atelier Resley-Rihanna, Akatsuki used to be involved with that, but then a few months ago, Koei Tecmo took ownership of that entire project entirely. So I believe Akatsuki is no longer involved with that. So it happens once in a while, but this is an interesting one because Octopath Traveler: Champions of the Continent already has a separate English version in Southeast Asia as one of its languages, and that's managed by NetEase. So NetEase Games has been managing the Southeast Asia version of this game since like December 2023. And I don't know exactly where the current like global players feel like in this game or like with this decision, because to me, like just from an outside perspective, the way that NetEase Games operates, especially with some of like the gacha games that they manage, they've definitely done like kind of, I guess, under the table scummy stuff, whether it's like kind of tinkering with rates, which we really shouldn't be tinkering with rates and not communicate that, because you're secretly manipulating probability. It can be stuff like accelerating content to the point that like no one feasibly who's playing it free to play can catch up because they're not getting enough currency to balance out the accelerated content. So NetEase Games has certainly not the best track record, but apparently when it comes to Octopath Traveler: Champions of the Continent, like people who play the Southeast Asia version seem to be okay with how NetEase is managing stuff because they get out content at a decent clip. Because for certain periods in that game, there can be a content lull, and it takes like a long time to get to like the next update with meaningful content. And with NetEase, like sort of maybe accelerating that content or bring it more forward or at a steady pace, like people who seem to play the Octopath or the Southeast Asia release of Octopath Traveler Champions seem to like dig the way that NetEase has been managing that. So I don't know if it's like a net positive or net negative at this point. Like to me, it's a little bit concerning because like obviously it was pushed to this point because I assume global hasn't been performing as well, and it's either shut down the game or give it to NetEase Games, and then who knows how long this will last with NetEase Games. And I don't know exactly if they're gonna like merge like the global server into like the English release of that game or whatever. Like it's kind of like in a weird scenario where I think they're shutting down the global client of the game for a few days, and then it'll be back up on January 16th. Like there'll be like an actual like dead down period as they're shifting over from one publisher to the next on this stuff. So it's a really it's an unusual situation. It's not the first of its kind, but it's unusual. And I would say for people who are playing the global version of this game, it's like just be very wary and like don't get too attached to this game sticking around the next 2 to 3 years. Like I know there's a lot of cool things in it, but I wouldn't get too attached at this point, especially with this kind of messaging. But good on them for finding a way to like instead of like sending out an ending of service notice to at least keep this running for a bit longer.
Yeah, it's almost kind of like a black spot or whatever, where it's like
Yeah.
it's the end is down the road for this
Uh,
game potentially, not
yeah.
guaranteed, but seemingly.
I would like to like an offline version of this game. Like Square Enix never does this, but like I would like something like Mega Man Die, like X Dive, like offline, for example. I would like to play an offline version of this Octopath Traveler Champions of the Continent game without it having to engage in like gotcha mechanics. Like I think like there's a lot of like cool concepts of this game that didn't even make it to like Octopath Traveler 2, where like
Mhm.
the structure of this game is like instead of following like a storyline from the perspective of one of the 8 main characters, it's like the storyline path is like following down the stories of like one of the 3 main villains initially instead. And like the battle system in Champions is different from even Octopath Traveler 2's because you can bring all 8 of your characters inside the battle. So you have like a frontline backline mechanic in this game, which wasn't even like that concept I wish was in Octopath Traveler 2, but it wasn't there. It went off in its own different direction, which is fine. But like I think that was like one of the coolest things out of this mobile game that what it introduced.
Let's see here. The Darkest Dungeon 2 is getting its second DLC pack in January. So this originally released in May of 2023, or at least went to PC in May of 2023. Got its Binding Blade DLC in December. They announced that a new game mode called Kingdoms was going to come to the game at some point. They're bundling that in. So on January 27th, Darkest Dungeon 2 is getting the Inhuman Bondage DLC, that's a title, as well as the Kingdoms game mode. So the Kingdoms update will be free, and the paid DLC will be the Inhuman Bondage. So both of those updates coming in late January for that game. Wizardry, the 5 Ordeals. This is just a little bit of a niche one. Its physical Switch version in Japan is being delayed. It was originally slated to come out in January, and now it's been pushed back to February. Let's see. 2 remasters have been scheduled to come west on March 6th. This is the Ever 17, the Out of Infinity, and Never 7, the Edge of Infinity. So these remasters, I don't know much about them. I know, Josh, you put this here in the outline.
The only thing I know about these are the precursor to 999, basically.
Okay.
Yeah,
I thought there was a export. Was it? There's an Xbox 360 port where they change it to some certain like assets into like 3D, and now we got like the Xbox additional content, but without the 3D changed assets or something.
yeah. So to break it down here, obviously with the Zero Escape trilogy, Kotaro Uchikoshi gained a lot of became famous in the West, thanks to projects like the Zero Escape trilogy and the AI the Somnium Files series and so forth. And the precursors to those was this Infinity series composed of Never 7 and Ever 17. And even before the Zero Escape games came out, Ever 17 got a lot of praise, for people who were in that fan translation scene and kept up with fan translated visual novels and so forth, because because you kind of have that sort of those early Uchikoshi ideas, and then this is the first time they've ever interfaced with that kind of story and so forth. So a lot of people really resonated with Ever 17 with the way it presents stuff. If people ever saw the GIF of some anime girl spinning in a washing machine, that's from Ever 17. I won't tell you the context, but I know it's a very famous GIF out there that people spread around. So Never 7 was initially released in Japan in the 2000, I believe, and Ever 17 was 2 years later. And these are kind of a weird sort of I wouldn't say a weird lineage, but it's sort of interesting what they're doing with it. For Never 7, you can already see some of the trailers, some of the screenshots. There's a little bit of AI upscaling to the image quality and to the assets of it, so it's not all perfectly redrawn, which is understandable why they do that. It's very costly to redraw everything. But the funny thing that people who've played Never 7 already noticed right away is how much better the dialogue boxes look, because the original release of Never 7 had these rainbow dialogue boxes that made text really annoying to read, because you had all these different colors in the dialogue box. Well, in this new remastered release of Never 7, they just have standard dark blue dialogue boxes, so obviously it's going to be easier to read and so forth. And of course, and this is without saying, but for both of these are the first official English. I think it's the first official English localization of both. I don't know if the 360 release of Ever 17 got an official release, but Ever 17's fan translation was kind of not in a great spot. A very good attempt at it, but not ideal. Especially in the standards of this day and age. Ever 17, Chow mentioned, is in a weird situation, because Never 7, its core writer was Uchikoshi with Never 7. With Ever 17, that gets complicated, because this is true for the core Ever 17 story that came out in 2002. But a re-release remake of this game was released on Xbox. I think it was around 2003. No, it was much earlier, or much later than that. It was 2011. Sorry, I'm thinking of the subsequent releases. So, and there's a remake on the 360 for Ever 17 in 2011, and that does a lot. That switches up a few things. One is, as Chow mentioned, there are certain 3D assets in the game that kind of looked out of place that are now being put back into 2D. So, kind of retaining, the more of the 2D artwork in that game, 2D assets. It's fine. The other thing is, in the Ever 17 remake that came out on 360, there are certain narrative elements that are introduced to it that were not written by Uchikoshi. There are some other writers involved with it. And for Ever 17 purists, and for people who are fans of Uchikoshi, they feel that these narrative elements kind of take away some portions of the story, because there's some downtime, let's say in Ever 17, and this downtime is now kind of has other stuff going along with it, that for some people they feel like some of these narrative elements foreshadow too much of the incoming twists in that game, and they feel like they kind of overstepped their boundaries and they kind of made it too obvious.
So even one of the costume changes, you give up the twist right away or something like that. That's what I remember from the community. But
yeah,
they weren't too favorable.
So, but you don't really have to get too much into the weeds about that if this is your first time with the Infinity series. I think they're interesting games. I'm not going to say I think Ever 17 is really interesting. Mileage may vary, especially with how you feel some of the narrative elements are, whether you're privy or not of Uchikoshi's involvement or lack of involvement in those parts. I think overall, Ever 17 is a pretty interesting story. Never 7. I'm not the biggest fan of Never 7.
I have a friend who's played these, and their immediate reaction when they saw the announcement of this was, "Oh, so people will finally realize that Uchikoshi just sticks with the same gimmick and always has."
Yeah, yes. I mean, for people who like that, that's fine. I mean, like some fighters really, they have a shtick attached to them, and they do it really well, and they're able to employ it and still get people coming back because they want more of it, or are just exposed to it for the first time and are fans, and that's totally fine. But yes, like if you're familiar with Uchikoshi's typical tropes and trappings in his narrative, these are kind of the precursors that really established his identity as a storyteller. No, not necessarily a bad thing. For people who are really, really, really into it, some people are bummed out that another game, Remember 11, The Age of Infinity, wasn't part of this. This came out in 2004. There's another part of like the Infinity series, considered the third entry in the Infinity series. And they're hoping, like, one, why did they omit it? And two, hopefully it comes later. It's not to say that like you'll get an incomplete experience or story out of Never 7 and Ever 17. They're not really directly linked to each other, like linearly. But people, this is considered a part of that series. They would want to see it represented in that. So kind of like the hope right now is they'll come around to Remember 11, and then they're gonna bundle it with its spin-off, 12 Riven, I called. And yeah, we'll see. We'll see if those eventually come. I would like to see them, but it's cool to see like just a new openly, easily accessible, localized releases that on modern platforms. That's cool. Like Brian said, this will be available on PlayStation 4, Switch, and PC via Steam. Over in the West, Mike Chunsoft is the one in charge of the Western releases of this game. While in Japan, Mages is in charge of it.
I don't think I actually said what the platforms were, so thank you.
Sorry, yeah.
Yeah, I just said the date. At least I think, but yeah, the PlayStation, Switch, PC on March 6th.
Just a day after my birthday.
There you
Guess
go.
this whole
Happy
time to play
birthday.
it to find out, is he really a hack?
Yeah, there you go. There's your academic release after a birthday.
No, like that's like all my friends like keep like telling me that the play it is like, see, I told you he's recycling this plot element from 999 or something like that. I'm like, but I'm not gonna go through this entire game just to find that out.
I'll definitely pick it up. I think it's a really interesting. These are interesting games.
I'll pick it up. I mean, I do like 999.
Yeah.
I definitely didn't play much of its sequels, but I did play through 999. So
Mhm. Virtue's Last Reward was good. Zero Time Dilemma. I remember just weird memory, but our Zero Time Dilemma thing was weird because Aaron and I were the one like co-reviewing it. Aaron was an alumni of the site, and I remember both of us kind of felt pretty similarly at the end of it. We're like, there's a really big letdown after Virtue's Last Reward, and we're like, well, it's still okay, solid, and we'll give it a 7. It's solid. It's solid, even though it doesn't like live up to the legacy of like its past 2 entries. And we got so much shit for that 7 score, but it
my
aged
friend
like
told
fine
me
wine.
my friend told me that game deserves like a 4. Like I don't know what happens in it. All I could say is I beat it because I won the coin toss in the first minute and I quit.
Nice. You're like, all right. You bought it, you read it for like 2 minutes, and then got the credits, and I'm like, I'm good.
Yep, I beat the game, right?
Sick. Hey, you know what? It's like in Metal Saga when your mom asks, "Hey, are you gonna leave the house?" and you're like, "No," and then end credits, and there you go, you beat Metal Saga.
Or it's like the
Isn't
one
that
in what's that game? A Far Cry when you
I was
wait at
gonna
the
bring that one up.
timetable.
It's Far Cry 4 or 5 or 6? I don't remember. I don't play those, but I played 2. But he's like, "Don't leave," and you're supposed to like escape. But if you don't leave, he's just like, "Oh, you're still here," and then the game ends supposedly.
Nice. Yeah, I like when games fucking do that in creative ways. It's so dumb.
You can make your SEO endings guide. The do nothing ending. Just put the controller down. You'll get this ending.
Yeah.
The last headline we have here, this is a game that was announced back in this March. The title of the game is called Maliki, Poison of the Past. It's based on a French, is it graphic novel? Yeah, French graphic novel. So it had an announcement in March, and it's going to be releasing next March on March 11th for Switch and PC. And is this gameplay trailer? Yes, this gameplay trailer did come alongside the announcement of the release date. So we do have a little 90-second gameplay trailer of the game. It looks vaguely Rune Factory-ish, Ys-ish maybe. But yeah, kind of isometric action RPG with a cheapy art style.
I don't know if it's action RPGs. It says they say
Oh no, it's
manipulate time and
turn-based. It's turn-based. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Sorry.
There seems to be like a
The exploration is isometric, and then the battles are turn-based. My mistake.
Yeah. So there's some sort of timeline system, and you can actually just manipulate. There will be systems to like encompass manipulating that timeline in the turn-based battle system.
And I guess this is the first video game adaptation of the Maliki. I assume it's Maliki. Maybe Maliki. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know.
I don't know. Yeah, it's obviously a French word, so it might be different. But it's first video game adaptation of the IP. So I'm curious to see, like, I don't know how big it is in France, but like curious to see like how well it does for fans of that IP. And that covers us for this podcast. So still got an hour out of that, an hour and 20 minutes.
It's short for us, and like the way too long for most others. Depending on like other podcasts in the space, it's like, oh man, we got to an hour and a half. Oh my god, we went so over. Holy crap!
So since it's more likely than ever that we have listened, or maybe I don't know that they got turned off by Beyblade Talk, I'm not sure. But if you're still here listening, obviously whatever you're listening to us on, Spotify, iTunes, or Apple Podcast or whatever, give us a rating, give us a review, leave us a comment. We like to see those. Join our Discord, discord.gg/RPG site. We'll see if we can get Josh's account hopefully all squared away. Hopefully that'll be by the time that'll all be squared away.
I'm able to log in. It's just a limited access. It should be fine, but I'm just making sure. Hey, if there's any suspicious things, you get a message from me and it doesn't sound like me, let me know. But I think we're good. I think I've secured it. I've done the proper things to re-secure it again. Hopefully this thing never happens again. I'm not like, yeah, man, it was crazy. It's so thinly veiled, but hopefully it just never happens again. Be careful out there.
Mm-hmm. Follow RPG Site on all the social media networks. Just search for RPG Space Site, and you should be able to find us. Otherwise, we're working out December and January plans for the site, so some of those are still being worked out. But whenever you hear from us next time, stay safe, take care, and we'll talk to y'all later.